Let's talk investing now. Gary Dougan is Chief Investment Officer, Emirates NBD, with us in the studio. Morning, Gary.
Good morning.
We're going to talk about Kazakhstan mainly today. First of all, your 60-second verdict on the Indian budget earlier this week. I know it's a country you've spent a lot of time in and analysing lately. What was the key takeaway for you?
No, I think they got it right. I think building up to the budget, a lot of people thought they were just going to spend a lot of money to keep the electorate happy. They didn't do that. And therefore, I think the prospect of cuts in interest rates as we go through the next few months, maybe 50 basis points in the coming weeks, it will be seen as a positive, will be helpful to industry. And let's just hope the banks pass that on to the consumer to allow mortgage rates to fall. So I would take it in general to be positive.
Right. Unfortunately, you haven't come in a lime green mankini as we were hoping, because we are talking about Kazakhstan this morning. And when I think of Kazakhstan, I think of a country in the middle of Asia, landlocked, plenty of oil, but doing okay. Is that a fair summary, or is there a lot more to it, or am I totally wrong?
Well, I think the update view is it's not doing so well, and it's been a bit of a tragedy for the last 1 to 2 years. And that's inevitable with the fall that we've seen in commodity prices. But I think it's I draw parallels between what's happening in Kazakhstan and quite frankly happening here in the UAE, is that we've had the challenge of lower commodity prices, and it's how the government responds to that challenge really sets the country up for the future. So I think, clearly here in the UAE, that we believe they're on top of the job. And in Kazakhstan, there are some signs, certainly in the fourth quarter of last year, that they are responding to those challenges, and the reforms and changes they're bringing to the country will have a good long-term payoff.
I was looking, and I don't do this very often, but I was looking at the main stock index in Kazakhstan, which I can tell you is the Kazakhstan Stock Exchange Index, the case, and it had a good day yesterday, up about 2.5%, and as you'd expect, over the past 18 months or so, it's come down quite sharply. It was up at 13,000 points back in the middle of 2014. It's below 1,000 points now, but it is recovering over the past few weeks or so. What's the story for investors in Kazakhstan?
Yeah, you're right. There's been a turning point, and I think if you go back to one of the most basic of commodities that Kazakhstan produces, it's copper, and the copper price started to rebound through January. But the story for the stock market is that massive devaluation of the currency, a stock market that was not accessible so easily to foreign investors, really was a kind of backwater of financial markets. And they have been working hard over the last 6 months to change that. So we now got access for foreign investors. We've got access for foreign investment banks. They don't need to set up an office in Kazakhstan to do business there. And we've got a kind of more global standards of trading with T+2, so basically settlement 2 days after you do the trade. So that's provided the infrastructure, but the most important thing will be a turnaround in the economy. And I think these nascent signs of a stabilization in commodity prices is certainly helping.
We were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, weren't we, at the CIS Global Business Forum, when a lot of these Eurasian countries were represented here in Dubai. Kazakhstan, of course, was one of them. Headline I was reading just a couple of days ago is that UAE investments in Kazakhstan have jumped to more than 2 billion dirhams, which is not massive, but it's not a drop in the ocean, is it? My question is this for investors in the UAE. Is this the kind of story you can invest in through, an investment fund like an Emirates NBD or a Morgan Stanley and buy the stocks and play it that way? Or do you have to get on a plane and go to Almaty and maybe buy a building or form a joint venture?
I think it's going to be more of the latter. So I think for small and medium-sized enterprises here in the UAE, I think they'll find an opportunity, let's just say, in Kazakhstan. Clearly, the backdrop to the UAE economy is a focus on the mineral wealth of the UAE, and a lot of businesses here to have a lot of expertise. Kazakhstan needs the cash, it needs the expertise, it's got massive mineral wealth which needs to develop over the longer term. So I think there are many businesses here that can do an investment almost immediately. In the stock market, more difficult, but the good news is that again, with the pressure of low commodity prices, the government's going to have to reform, and already it's talking about some significant privatizations in the future which will make the stock market bigger. Today it's a fraction even of the size of the Dubai market, and as it gets bigger, it'll get it on radar screen, and you'll get better access points through funds.
I'm just looking at the map at the moment of Kazakhstan, and the mineral wealth that it's got under its soil must be massive, because it's a huge huge country. I mean, it stretches. When I think of Kazakhstan, I was thinking of it something to the sort of northeast of here. But in actual fact, the western border of Kazakhstan is even west of Kuwait. Certainly west of us here, and it's stretching all the way in the eastern side to above Bangladesh. So that's how wide the country is. And in total, it's about the same size as virtually all of the other stans put together. So it must have a lot of unexplored wealth and a lot of potential as well.
Absolutely. It's got the second largest deposits of uranium, fifth largest of copper, second largest in zinc. It's got the 11th largest reserves of oil and gas in the world. And yet, a relatively small population of 18 million people, which if you take all that wealth put together, they're probably some of the richest people in the world today, but don't perhaps quite know it. But we are, I think, looking at something that is a kind of 10 to 15 year prospect. But this will be a bigger country. It'll be by land mass, it's a big country already. But I think in terms of economic importance, with the improvements in commodity prices, this country is going to be going up the league tables.
I guess I have to ask this, and it may be unfair on Kazakhstan, but is it one of those countries where it's difficult to do business? Are there underhand deals and vested interests and, perhaps people requesting cash for deals and things?
It has been a difficult country. I think if you look at competitiveness and ease of doing business, it hasn't been ranking particularly high, but at the top end of the CIS countries. The one thing to be said is that they have been trying to change it. So in the last few months, I think with the pushing of the UAE government, you now just go to one point in Almaty or Astana, and you're able to get a new trade license or able to do business, whereas before it required you going around many ministries negotiating. So it's not good, but it's getting better.
If we look at the currency, that's a real opportunity, isn't it? And this was one of the themes that came out of the CIS Global Business Forum, that assets are much cheaper today than they were 2 years ago. I'm looking, for example, at the Kazakhstan currency. Is it the tenge or the tenge?
Tenge.
The tenge. Today, $1 will buy you 348 of them. A couple of years ago, it would have brought you about half that, just 188. So if you're buying hotels, houses, offices in Almaty today, in dirham or dollar terms, they're half the price, aren't they? Which is something to consider, surely.
It is something to consider, although the offset to that, of course, is that this has come as a consequence of higher inflation, which has been running at 15%. But yes, there's an opportunity to buy cheap assets there. And the good news is that that currency is starting to stabilize. So if you felt that you could get the assets maybe cheaper some months down the road, we're now seeing with interest rates at 17%, maybe inflation falling quite rapidly as we go through the balance this year, the currency will stabilize. So this could be a very sweet point to be more involved in that economy. And
of course, it's one of the CIS states and had formerly had a very good relationship with Russia. For people from this part of the world maybe looking to do business in Russia, maybe Kazakhstan will be a good backdoor for that, especially as it gets easier to set up companies there.
It is, because it ranks second to Russia on many factors within that broad group in terms of economic development, future prospects, and it's kind of the strength of the assets in the ground. So yes, it is. It's a good access point, and you'll find a very well-educated young population there, which again contrasts with some of the other CIS countries.
Gary Dougan, Chief Investment Officer, Emirates NBD. Nice talking to you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.